farmers, mountain back to Atlantic Ocean, upon me hills to poor country, to educate, elevate, and promote. Yeah, focus on Liberia, for Liberia, Liberia, for Liberia, yeah, 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 yeah. From Monday to Sunday, from Monday to Sunday, it's focus on Liberia. Talk about home affairs, hey, in diaspora, current affairs, hey, reliable information, history, ooh, talking about culture, yeah, politics, education, entertainment, yeah, business, sports, advertisement, articulation. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. From Monday to Sunday. Focus on.
Good evening and welcome to Roundtable Africa. Tonight we turn our focus to Benin, a country long considered one of West Africa's more stable democracies, now shaken by a failed coup attempt on December 7. With heightened tensions, questions about regional security and the future of governance in Benin, we are honored to have Mr. Mohamed Sherif. He is an expert and deeply familiar with Benin's political landscape and current developments. He's also FOL political analyst. He is a colleague all the way from Kilipo Inc., from Waplo Institute. Welcome, Mr. Sherif, to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, Dennis. It's great to be here to discuss these issues that affect sub-Saharan Africa.
And we want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe. This is Roundtable Africa, where we discuss Africa. The issues are happening very fast, and please don't think that we are all discussing terrible issues in bad countries. But come and bring us up to speed. We've been on this journey for some time now. Bring us up to speed to where we are in the whole African landscape and why it's important that we discuss Africa.
Thank you. West Africa currently lies in what we will call the cool belt. It's a terminology that I hate to employ or to use or to utilize, but it is the situation where now you have, since the year 2020, you have about a dozen successful military coup d'etat. So, I can think of at least 10 off the top of my head when you talk about Mali, twice Niger, Burkina Faso, Sudan, Chad, countries like that. And we just had one in Guinea-Bissau where the incumbent president, who it is alleged was on the verge of losing the election, invited the military to take over, in a very cynical ploy to derail the Bissau-Guinean democracy. And so we have a situation currently that we're about to talk about in Benin. Benin is having a multi-party election in April of 2026. This last Sunday morning on Benin's TV station, a group of military officers announced that they have taken over power from President Patrice Talon. Talon has been in office since 2016. He won election in 2016 and won re-election 5 years after that. So he's on the verge of stepping down, and the military intervened just 2 days ago. However, the coup was foiled. It's now considered an unsuccessful military attempt to take power. What happened then, when the military officers attempted to take over, relatively successfully, they were thwarted. The attempt was thwarted by loyalists with the support of Nigeria and some elements of ECOWAS forces.
Thank you. Anytime we hear of failed coup attempt, especially those of us my age, we know what that means for an African country. But again, welcome. Thank you for coming, Benin. And I have in the title there, Frontlines of the Sahel Spillover, the Sahel region. Set the stage for us and why Benin is a part of the, what is this Sahel? We talk about it a lot, and why is it that people normally when it comes to the stability of the sub-region, they keep an eye on them.
You keep an eye on that area because after the fall of Muammar Gaddafi in Libya in 2011, armed groups have from that area came down to places like Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger to cause instability in those countries. These armed groups, otherwise, popularly known in the Western media as the jihadists elements, some of them are loyal to Al Qaeda and different, Islamist groups up in the north of Mali and Burkina Faso and Niger. They're causing a lot of trouble for these governments. And so they operate as a cartel. And, right now in Mali, for example, they're kidnapping, people, individuals, foreigners for ransom. They kidnapped recently a citizen of a Middle East, a Middle Easterner from a wealthy family, Middle Eastern family, and the ransom, from what I was able to read on, was like $50 million, and that's how that's the kind of money that they are making from their enterprise. But their main goal is to overthrow these governments and impose their own version of what they consider Islam. And so it's not just the economic part of it. Their enterprise is to overthrow these secular government and impose an Islamic form of a government. And they've caused troubles in those three countries particularly. And Benin, Benin is very interesting because Benin is bordered by Burkina Faso in the north, Burkina Faso, and Niger in the north. You also have Togo, that's also bordering Benin, and Nigeria. But particularly in northern Benin, that's a whole part of the Sahel region. And so Islamist groups, armed groups from Burkina Faso, southern Burkina Faso, and Niger, make their way down to Benin and, launch attacks against the Beninese, the Beninois army. And they've been successful in causing trouble in northern Benin. And because of that, because of that instability, this group of army officers, led by Pascal, his last name is Pascal Tigri, who was the leader of the short-lived takeover. One of his announcements, was that, the army has been neglected in northern Benin, in the front lines. And so their men were dying. And so that was one of the reasons why they decided to take over.
Thank you. So, could you start by just giving us some historical context? I know you talk a little bit about that. How has Benin's political trajectory since independence shaped its reputation has a relatively stable democracy in West Africa?
Yeah, Benin, Benin was part of the French Empire. You know, the French colonial empire. Benin was known as Dahomey, French Dahomey, and you know, if you go back pre-colonial times, you know, there were African kingdoms which were destabilized by the imperialists, and you know they installed their own administration in that area. So fast forward to 1960 with the wave of independence, Benin gained independence in 1960. So right after independence in 1960, there was a military coup in 1963. Christopher Soglo was the first military officer in 1963 who launched that coup d'etat against Hubert Maga, who was the first president of Benin. And then Soglo again, you know, came back in 1965. There was a brief period of civilian rule, and Soglo again came back in 1965 and launched another successful coup d'etat. Um, and he stayed on till 1967. And 2 years later, Soglo was overthrown by a group of army officers. It went on, and then these army officers decided to install a civilian administration. So somewhere in between 1967 to 1972, there were a succession of civilian administrations, and the Beninois agreed to have a triumvirate where you have three individuals who were ruling. So if it was your term, you rule for a year, you run the country for a year, and then the next person will come in and rule for and run the country for another year, and then the third person will run the country for another year. So they were doing this, and Major Matthew Kirikou, he's a very important figure in Beninois politics. Matthew Kirikou came in 1972. He said, enough with this. This small country, you know, with three presidents, we're not going to do this no more. So, so he took all these guys, you know, he overthrew the administration, you know, dismissed all these guys, and installed himself as the military ruler of Benin. And he later on changed the name of the country to the People's Republic. It was Dahomey then. So he later on renamed it to the People's Republic of Benin. And his ideology was Marxism, Leninism. And, you know, Matthew Kirikou was a very charismatic military officer. There was, in fact, when he did that, a few years later, the imperialists, you know, with the connivance of France, tried to overthrow Matthew Kirikou. They invaded the Beninois capital, and you know, with mercenaries and whatnot. But Matthew Kirikou, his forces were able to defeat this insurgency at the time. So he stayed on till 1990, and with the wind of change for democracy, he stepped down. He actually lost the election of March 1991, and so he stepped down. He was a very crafty politician because he made no troubles. He went into some sort of obscurity, but he made a comeback in 2006. He won 2 terms, retired after 2 terms, and you know, a few years later, he passed away. And Matthew Kirikou is honored and is beloved by the people of Benin.
And thank you, Mr. Sherif, for refreshing my memory on Matthew Kirikou.
Yes. a
Yeah,
very tall,
right.
you know,
It's like we live through his era,
very
through the war.
charismatic. Yes,
Yeah.
very charismatic Matthew Kiriko.
And what, compared to other, and Benin, I've been there, passing through there to go to Nigeria. Cotonou is so beautiful.
Hmm.
I love the place. It's like Togo, Benin, and then so going through there is very nice. I love it. But what factors made Benin appear less vulnerable to coup compared to neighbors like Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso? And why might that be changing now?
And before I answer that question, so there was a guy, in the succession of presidency, there was Nissoufou Soglo. The
Yeah,
reason why I'm mentioning Nissoufou Soglo because we heard his name. Charles Taylor said his name several times.
yeah, of course.
He was a guy that Taylor trusted him. I think he was more sympathetic to Taylor. So at every negotiation, he wanted Nisifo Soglo's input. So Soglo was part of those long line of president. In fact, he actually won the first multi-party election in March 1991. So he defeated Matthew Kirikou in 1991. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, Kirikou came back. See, what Kirikou did was he went to the priests and he made a confession. He said, "Look, I made a mistake. My things that I did. I'm so sorry for them now." So he repented his, political sin, so to speak. And then, people love that. They love that kind of story. Here's a man who was our president. And now he said he made a mistake, and his popularity zoomed. And part of that was able to bolster his chances of coming back and winning two terms. So your question about why was Benin stable and then up to now. Benin, to start off, it was never stable. So as I mentioned in the lead up to this, you had these succession of military coups, and these coups, some of the military takeovers were influenced by colonial powers. But when Kirikou came in, he basically got rid of all of this. He ruled. I mean, his ideology was Marxism. He was a Marxist, and he was a strong military leader. So there were a lot of institutions he put in place. They had a relatively strong military. Their institution was loyal.
And that stability in Sharia has been like 30, 40 years now. So
Absolutely. It
we
has
can say
been
that.
very, very stable since then, since 1972. There was a coup attempt, as I mentioned, by a French mercenary in 1977. So since then, this stability Benin has been known for this kind of stability in multi-party democracy where the president, even the incumbent, is conceding defeat. And so that has been going on until now. But what has happened now is that the dynamics have changed. Current President Patrice Talon has, sort of exhibited some sort of dictatorial tendencies. Patrice Talon has he has borrowed a page from Alassane Ouattara. He has now borrowed the main opposition leader, Boni Yayi. Boni Yayi is a former president of Benin. Boni Yayi also was chairman of ECOWAS at one point. So he's a very respected African statesman, Boni Yayi is. This is a man who is trying to make a comeback now. And Patrice Talon fears that if Boni Yayi runs, Boni Yayi is probably going to win the election. So he found a way to bar Boni Yayi's party, which is the Democrats. They're called the Democrats. So he barred his party. So Boni Yayi is not able to run for president now. So there was a discussion recently. And so, some African leaders, expressed concern about this sort of, dictatorial tendency. So they had, some conversation, political dialogue recently where Patrice Talon allowed the opposition to run in the legislative election, but they're not going to run in the presidential election, but they're going to run in the legislative election. What sense does this make? So this coup comes against the background of some of these autocratic tendencies that Patrice Talon has now exhibited in Benin that was never there before.
Right, and we're going to come to this. You mentioned something that he took something out of Ouattara's playbook.
Yes.
Right, because we look at Ouattara, you look at in Guinea, and all these kind of things now is like this political maneuverings, and sometimes they do it with the constitution.
Yes.
So we're going to get to that later and see why we need to keep an eye out for this kind of behavior.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And what's up with this? Even though it sounds, when you mentioned Nsefo Soklo, what came to my mind is what is this Soklo thing? Even though his Soklo is GLO, but you know Yamasoklo, and then Soklo in Southeast cassava. So I don't know what this cassava is.
Yeah. I remember, in Grebo. Yes. You remind me of that.
There's something with this Soklo here that is in West Africa. We got to find out.
It's interesting, So, part of the, of course, we're not going to get into that, but, we believe that, we are extension, we are just one people. So part of our extensions, our extended relatives and so on and so forth went to different places. And yes, you're absolutely correct. That name is southeastern Liberia.
Right. And just to tell you, without going into anthropology and all that, but just from looking, right?
Yes.
Because sometimes we make the mistake and say, oh, this tribe came from this place. I was at an event and the people say, oh, there's people from Nimba and Gio, and this guy was telling them, say, we actually came from Africa Coast. We came from, so after the program, I told somebody aside. I said, do you understand when they say we came from Africa Coast? He said, but Mr. Jai, why you pick? I said, because you're talking, when did we have Africa Coast? He said, around 1960. I said, okay. And when did they come? He said, well, could be in 18 something. I said, so the place he said they came from was it Africa Coast? Then he came and said, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because we Liberians always like to say we came from somewhere, we came from this place. But those areas were never called Africa Coast, they were never called Guinea. So you have the same Grebo people in River G across the border in Taboo from Maryland, Taboo. So you see, that's the same people. So we just been together and we just spreading, right?
Yes.
So it's not the idea of coming from anywhere. We are there. Somebody came and just put a line between us.
It's it's an interesting question. Hopefully at some point, on some other shows, we'll get into the details of these. But the thing is that these areas were never called Ivory Coast or Guinea or what have you. But when you look at the trend, the route, the migration route, I will argue, came from the east and moved towards the west to the Atlantic Ocean. Keep in mind, this was the great empires of old were around the eastern edges of West Africa, if that makes sense. So you're talking about the Ghana Empire, the Songhai Empire, the Mali Empire. Before that, there were all these other empires as well that collapsed. And after the collapse of these empires, or before the collapse of these empires, people were moving. People were on the move and just moving from place to place. I mean, when the Europeans arrived, that just shattered the remnants of everything that we had. But it's a very interesting, historical backdrop. That is something that definitely we can discuss at some point.
And not to deviate, but we tend to think of migration like people today got up and say, hey, we go in this place, and everybody start moving, right? But some of these is not as we think. definitely when we live here, we are maybe 10 and we start having children,
Yes,
people start to go far off to make farms, to do
yes,
stuff. So
yes.
it's migration shouldn't be thought of like today we are deciding and we all going,
It
just
was,
heading out in the forest. And we're
it
saying
was,
that
right, right,
right. And we're
right.
saying
It was,
that in today's, in today's like where, you are a little village that was maybe like three huts before, but today when you go there, they're like maybe 100 to 200
Maybe,
houses.
yeah, yes, yes. Some of the migrations, I mean, famously, Zwedru,
Yeah.
most of my people that, came down to Zwedru, I mean, they used to trade, salt
Yeah.
and cola nuts and different things of that nature, because there was a gold rush in that area, in the area of Grand Jita, and going down in the south. um and so people were walking. I mean, we're talking about times there were no vehicles, so they will walk,
Mhm.
like you said. It wasn't like an organized, people just got and said, okay, we're going to go go to Zwedru now and
Right.
there was gold rush. So one person would go, they'll go and buy some gold and come back and and resell this in Ganta and other places.
Right.
And you say, okay, well, this place seems to be good, so I'm going to stay here.
Right.
And
Or I'm gonna stay here for a week or two, and you
then
find a girl, it turns to money.
there you go. Right,
Right. All
right.
right. Let's come back to Benin, and we already talked about some of those things that Mr. President is doing,
Mhm.
Talon is doing, that is kind of causing this kind of thing. What is driving that? What is causing it? Is he just different, or is it what is he? What is he able? What is driving him to do those kind of things? And what is he using? And by that I mean, what are some of the buttons that he's pressing? Who is supporting him? Who is behind that? Who else is helping him? Is it, and
What
how is
what
he
is
able to do it?
Yeah, what I have maintained, in some of my discourse is that these African leaders are copycats, and and a lot of them are deliberate about what they are doing. If Patrice Talon saw Alassane Ouattara manipulate the constitution, stage a constitutional coup d'état, and by the way, Alassane Ouattara and it was one of those who contributed to the clamp down, of this coup d'etat. We're hearing that Ivorians, security forces were involved, but it was mostly Nigeria. So can you imagine, Ouattara is preserving democracy in Benin, and he's not doing the same in Cote d'Ivoire. So it's laughable that Ouattara, who has staged a constitutional coup d'etat already, is now preserving, trying to protect, democracy in Benin. So sometimes, the legitimacy of that enterprise is undermined by people like that, people like Alassane Ouattara, people, who have no business now being in the presidency, but they use the Constitution, they manipulate the Constitution. So Talon did the same thing, manipulating the Constitution to make sure that when he's not there, the one good thing that he's done, he has committed himself to 2 terms. But then what they're doing is, his hand-picked successor now, who's going to, his former finance minister, who's likely going to replace him because he's the leading candidate after he has cleared the field. So the new thing now in African democracy is, okay, I'm stepping down, but I'm going to clear the field. Everyone else that's supposed to win, they're not going to participate in the election. So they'll have some weaklings. They'll put together some sycophants, paid agents, proclaiming those paid agents as candidates. They're nothing but supporters of the status quo, but they'll present themselves as credible candidates, but they're not credible, and that's what Patrice Talon is doing now. So the coalition supporting the ruling party, the coalition for the ruling party is really dominant in Benin right now. Boni Yayi, who had a very good chance of coming back, just like Kirikou did, is now on the sidelines.
Mm.
You know, trying to make sure that that he can wait. But Boni Yayi is not a young man, so probably by the next election he's not going to be able to run. See, these kinds of things. When you do that, you're impacting people in so many different ways,
Yeah.
because maybe he still has a lot to offer to his country. But in 7 years, because I think they've changed the constitution now to the presidential term from 5 to 7 years. So if he came back in 7 years, he may be too old, and to be able to do anything effective for his country. And so they're doing this. Your question, I believe that Talon is doing this to save himself, so that Boni Yayi doesn't come back and arrest him and put him in jail. Because when Boni Yayi was president, there were tensions between the two men, and Talon had to go into exile in France. He said that in one of his speeches. He said, "Look, when I was in the opposition, they treated me bad, and I was in exile in France, and I came back, and I'm all these things I'm doing, and then you guys are criticizing me." See, this is the thing, the vendetta, the sheer vendetta. So then some of these things is just vendetta.
Right.
African leaders.
And Mr. Sherif, because we allow, especially the young people, Africa being one of the youngest continent,
Mhm.
young people allow one group to just hold on to power forever,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Thomas Boni Yayi was there, and it is that thing in Africa now where we don't have people to say, well, I serve, train others to take after me. It's
Mhm.
like, and probably maybe it has to do with our culture, right? Where you cannot have a king, a king stays forever. So
Mhm.
why the king or the one we call Baal? Because you can't have a new Baal when the current Baal is still there. So
Yeah,
unless that Baal dies, you cannot
yeah,
have
yeah.
another Baal.
Then you
And
have
so
the same, yeah. Then you have the same situation in Cote d'Ivoire,
yeah,
where Bagbo, Bagbo is old. He's an old man,
yeah,
but he's still coming back, trying to fight for his old job.
yeah.
You have Alassane Ouattara, committing coup d'états after coup d'états, constitutional coup d'états, who's sitting there, another old man, doesn't want to go away, So instead of Bagbo just giving up to some young guy, some young person to say, look, you guys are going to step in our shoes now. We want to leave you a legacy of, you know, training you, a legacy of, passing the baton to the new generation.
Yeah.
Because a lot of that is not happening, especially in West
No,
Africa. You
it's
know,
not.
the old people are the one holding the baton. They want the young people to give them the baton. You
Yeah.
have
But
to, we're going to do this. We know best. And a lot of that is going on, in West Africa. It's not
and then
unique to Benin.
when you come to Liberia, in fact, the old people are not even, to me, the old people could be saying that but silently, but the young people are actually saying, oh man, it's because of you, by you, I'm going to drink water. So stay there, because if you leave, I don't have a chance to
Yes.
be in government. So
Yeah.
Mr. Old Man or Mr. Old Guy, just stay, right?
Hmm.
It's anyway. Let's come back to Benin. Let's talk about the geography, right?
Hmm.
Benin's geographic position and bordering, Niger,
Hmm.
Nigeria. How does the regional instability? We talk a little bit about that, but let's add Nigeria in the mix. The recent coup in Niger, spilling over. So let's talk about that whole region, the borders area. How do those activities in those areas also affecting Benin?
Yeah, so Benin lies in the heart of the cool belt, and so the fact that Benin is very unique in terms of northern Benin borders the Sahel region, the areas of instability. Time and time and again, jihadist groups have attacked the Benin army, and I mean, forgive me, sometime in French it's a Beninois. Um,
Yeah.
So they've attacked the army of Benin and the citizens of Benin and killed people in that area. And now, so real quick, so the military officers of the CMR, the Comité Militaire de la Fondation, which means Military Committee for Reformation, the French acronym is CMR. So the group of military officers who attempted to seize power yesterday, they announced, their slogan was La patrie ou la mort, le peuple d'abord, fatherland or death, the people first. So what does that mean? So this is almost similar to Thomas Sankara, when Thomas Sankara says fatherland or death, we will overcome. Traore, that's the slogan that Traore says, at the end of his speeches, fatherland or death, we shall overcome, which means we're going to fight for our patrimony. We stand for our patrimony with valor, with strength, with boldness. So there is sort of a similarity now, so we're seeing these guys from speculation, looks like, they have some loyalty to, they would have some loyalty to the Sahel states, the organization of the Sahel states, the AES, the Association of Sahel States, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali. So if this coup has succeeded, most likely Benin would have joined. I will argue that if this coup d'etat has succeeded, Benin would have succeeded from ECOWAS. Benin would have joined Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali in the coalition, in the alliance of the AES. So that trouble, these guys, they're not stupid. People like Ouattara and Tinubu, they're not stupid. They're like, okay, you are at our frontier. You're sitting right here. So let's put this down, because if they had not put that down, then you have one more alliance, one more member of the AES alliance that would have broken away from ECOWAS, that's sitting there at the mouth of Ghana, of Nigeria. That's trouble for Ghana. That's trouble for Togo. That's trouble for Nigeria already. And so they rather not deal with that headache. And meanwhile, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I want to just come to the coup now. How that was, because it failed. What happened? Yes. Was it like 1985? They say, "Oh no, they didn't catch him." And what happened?
Man, so what happened was, these guys, group of army officers, 8 of them went to the television station. They announced the formation of the CMR, this military junta. And they dissolved the constitution, dissolved the government of Patrice Talon. They closed Benin off, the sealed international boundaries, and their airspace was closed according to the military junta. And so they retreated to a military barrack, and there were shootings in that military barrack. And so in that barrack, the encounter in the capital, Cotonou, they encountered loyalist forces who resisted being disarmed. And so in that time, Tinubu, the President Talon, called Tinubu for help. And these guys were still on the loose. The government officials under Talon were still at large. And they were still equipped with their communication and all of these different things. So they were able to call their hotlines to come in and help. And the difference was that, Nigeria, of course, intervened. Had it not been that, I don't think the coup would have failed. So the intervention of Nigeria made a difference in thwarting this military coup.
And what precedent does that set? Because at first we were going as ECOWAS. Remember the Gambia and all those things coming? And at that time, ECOMON was strong, putting down this kind of coup. Now we don't see that anymore. But this is someone calling and say, help me. And now we have Nigeria, the big brother now, Cote d'Ivoire, maybe coming
Yeah.
to help. Where do we go from there? Is it based because Benin is small? If that issue was in Cote d'Ivoire, would Nigeria be able to help?
It's an excellent question. Um, Size, sometimes matters,
Yeah.
and not only size but strength also matters. So they can pick on you if you're not too strong. They can pick on you. If you're small, they can pick on you. So your question is well in place. What if this had been Cote d'Ivoire? What if this had been Nigeria? Who would have done anything? I mean, you cannot go in there. You cannot go in there and just go in and out. You can't just go in there and just bomb it. Bomb an entire garrison of army. I mean, Benin has a small size military, and so it's easy to take care of them. Um, what it is that for some time now, you know. So first of all, ECOWAS, after the Liberian Civil War, as a result of the Liberian Civil War, ECOWAS resolved that no more that we will surrender to military rule. We are on this track of democracy. So what you had after the Liberian Civil War were ECOWAS interventions in different countries to restore democracy. In some instances, to install the democratically elected president, like they did in Gambia. In Mali, when there was a coup d'état, ECOWAS went there and thwarted that coup, that military takeover. And they went into different countries. They went into Sierra Leone as well when there was a military coup in Sierra Leone. Um, when Alassane Ouattara, again, the guys who are the backbone of ECOWAS, who proclaim, to be fighting for democracy, when they themselves are staging these, constitutional coup d'etats, guys like, Alassane Ouattara, Alpha Conde and others, when they did that, ECOWAS did nothing.
Yeah.
So that delegitimizes their project, their democratization project. That weakened ECOWAS. So by the time you got to the Niger coup d'etat, ECOWAS had attempted to send, a detachment of ECOWAS, intervention force to remove the military junta in Niger. At that time, the three AES states were determined to fight the ECOWAS forces. The citizens of Niger were determined to fight on the side of the military. And, so it would have been a catastrophic event if ECOWAS intervened. So when ECOWAS was not able to intervene in Niger to restore the democratically elected president there, when ECOWAS was unable to intervene in Mali to restore democracy in Mali, ECOWAS' position was weakened, coupled with all these other civilian presidents who are now, circumventing the Constitution to prolong their stay in power. And so with the Benin situation, this is a new dynamic. It'll be interesting to see where ECOWAS goes from here. Are they now going to use the the Benin model to apply that elsewhere? Because then we live in a period of coup d'etats. Since 2020, sub-Saharan Africa has seen about a dozen successful coup d'etat. And if ECOWAS is not able to do something in our region, in the region of West Africa, then there's trouble for all of us in West Africa. No country is spared from the reach of the military officers, because these guys are looking at the same thing. They're looking at wealth. The person that's the person that's guarding the president, the head of the presidential guard. It's they're all waiting for their time, at this point in time. So, whether you're Liberia, whether you're anywhere, you're not spared. this is what we have to, we have to say as it is. I mean, we have in our own situation, we have a democracy that's, democracy. It is a democracy. Ours is a democracy, but it is a flawed democracy. It is not accompanied by, respect for the rule of law and all these different things. So democracies like that are very vulnerable to, intervention from the military.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll come to the implications on Liberia. But let you watching Roundtable Africa, where we discuss in Africa, our dear continent. I just want you to see that. Let me welcome all those who are watching us. I see the Benedict Bestman Bakola. Welcome, Gabriel. Gabriel thought we were joking. Gabriel, welcome. Theodosia Hart from PA, welcome to the show. Roosevelt Croman, and all of those watching either on Facebook, YouTube, and other social media platform, welcome to Roundtable Africa. Let's talk about the reactions from other countries. Did Liberia say anything, or international, local, West Africa? What has been the reaction to the failed coup attending Benin?
Our monitor Liberia has not said something strangely. That, this is something that the foreign minister, I don't know where the foreign minister is. The foreign minister should be made aware if she's not aware.
Minister, I think she's winning awards in Liberia, has, I think, the most performing minister or something like that. Yeah.
Oh God, please help me, please. I mean,
yeah. So if you try to beat on her, I mean, I don't think there are many people with you on this one.
Many people, because they have not heard my thesis, right? They have not heard what I will put out here, because I've said enough about this foreign minister. Yeah. This foreign minister.
No, leave the foreign minister. Let's go on the international reaction from France, from US, regional allies.
Okay, not tonight for the foreign minister. Okay, I'll leave her alone. So the international community, Liberia has not reacted, not yet. Maybe they're going to be a Johnny come lately. But immediately, in the immediate aftermath of the attempted coup, as soon as these guys were on Benin's television set, was when ECOWAS scrambled at least 4 members, Sierra Leone, Cote d'Ivoire, and Nigeria, Ghana and Nigeria, scramble forces to intervene on behalf of the constitutionally elected president, Patrice Talon. So that was an immediate reaction. Another reaction came from AU. Okay, AU condemned the takeover. That's a joke, because AU allowed, Suhulu Hassan to murder people. It said that she murdered hundreds of people, some said thousands of people. AU sat there and Paul Biya stole the election. Paul Biya is not the elected president of Cameroon. He killed a lot of people, hundreds of Cameroonians. Up to this time, an opposition leader in Cameroon just died in jail. Paul Biya kept the opposition leader and this man's family members and the opposition community. This man was sick while he was in jail. They deny him treatment. Paul Biya is an animal. And so what was the AU's reaction? Silence, nothing. So you're going to condemn Benin's coup? Like it's a joke. What's
the criteria they're using?
I don't know what they're using at this point. And so when you don't have a backbone, to speak against, the mass killing of people in places like Tanzania, in Kenya, in Cameroon, then don't talk about Benin. You don't have the credibility now to talk about anywhere else. So the AU, if you will, is just there. It's just another organization that's sitting out there, very impotent, doing nothing, which is a betrayal to the ideals of Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame Nkrumah would have loved to see an organization that's now working towards unifying all of Africa, not just in these little fiefdoms and segments, these different countries. We should have been one country. If it was up to Kwame Nkrumah and others, we should have been one country by now. We should have been the United States of Africa. So we're not speaking as a Liberian or Ghanaian or Nigerian or Guinean, Sierra Leonean, all these different things. We would have presented ourselves as citizens of the United States of Africa. And because that didn't happen, they went with the ideology of people like Tubman. So yeah, you have this AU and a very weak AU.
Yeah, I remember I was on a program in 1988 on TV, Education Searchlight.
Yeah.
And I was opposed to Tubman. And when I got back on campus, the reaction was not pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know.
you don't understand. Student groups they say you don't understand.
Yes.
Tubman was a shrewd politician and all that.
Our fathers,
Yeah.
used to, my father, his brothers, people in my family, my father, all they used to talk about was, Tubman, what Tubman time was good. Tubman time was good. That's what they used to talk about.
But Liberia now, and when we're talking about, minister and all that, Liberia's response, it's like Liberia has checked out, man.
Yeah.
Even if Liberia says something about the coup in Benin, will people listen? Did we see that in the previous administration? And even if you go back to President Sirleaf, I mean, just quickly, because as I was asking you about what has been the responses from these countries, I mean, I don't know what Liberia will be saying. And what happened to us? Is it because Charles Taylor couldn't have said anything because he'll be
right?
And then came President Sirleaf. I don't know if she was thinking more on the global stage than sub-region. Well, President Weah, now President Boakai. Have we checked out or are we doing something?
I think Sirleaf did a little bit. I mean, she wasn't she chair of ECOWAS at some? I mean, yes, ECOWAS at some point. So she did some things. So she was aware of the international politics. So she did do something, and she endeared herself to lead us in the region. So she was very much aware. I mean, this woman's chief of staff was a Nigerian. So she attached herself to regionalism. So after that, her successors not so much. George Weah was not interested. I mean, he didn't study anything on international regionalism. I mean,
you might have not studied, but what's about your foreign minister? What's about other people?
Maxwell Kimia was, to me, was the worst. I mean, and then you replace Maxwell Kimia with another person who's basically learning on the job. So we've had foreign ministers after foreign ministers that are basically learning on the job, and that is the problem. Dennis, when I was at the university, I mean, we have professors, because I minor at the university in international relations. Of course, my bachelor's is international relations. So we had people who were very. I mean, you're talking about Molivi Perry, one of the preeminent Liberian diplomat. Even at that time, Molivi Perry was criticizing criticizing people at the foreign ministry. We thought we had some of the best people at the time, but at the time, these professors, they were criticizing those guys at the foreign ministry that they don't know anything. So this is not a new thing to me. So I'm stepping in the shoes of those people who had a different look on things. At the time. But look, I think that when you talk about these foreign ministers that they're putting in now, as I said, without belaboring the point, I mean, you look at Maxwell Kimia, what could he have done? What advice?
Yeah.
Because the foreign minister is
I think
supposed to
I think
advise the
I think
president.
his dress code was more distracting than the job. But
I mean, the dress code was bad, and these are things you wanna look at, And nobody is saying you put on a Western attire. What happened to some of the great African
yeah.
attires? What happened to those, Maxwell Kimia? Do you want to be in those big corsets that
Good
your
of many
grandfather
colors.
passed down to you?
Mr. Sherif, let's look at with elections scheduled for 2026.
That's
What scenarios do you see unfolding? Will this feel coup now attempt strengthen democratic resilience, or does it expose the vulnerabilities that could resurface? I mean, is the president Talon, is he going to make some changes now? Say, I don't think I'm that strong, so maybe I shouldn't do X, Y, Z. What do you see unfolding?
he's going to. I surmise that he's going to go in the opposite direction. Talon is going to use this. Talon has
More force?
yeah, he has used some autocratic. He has adopted some autocratic tendencies. So what he's going to do is they've already arrested uh, all of the coup makers except the leader of the coup, who's still at large. Tigre Pascal Tigre is still at large. And what they're going to do, they're going to look for civilian accomplices. They're going to use this opportunity to arrest members of the opposition that will cause them some political troubles. So, but Patrice Talon, before this time, has political opponents. He has political prisoners in Benin as we speak. So he's going to double down on this because with Alassane Ouattara on his side, and Alassane Ouattara, we know that Alassane Ouattara is not nice to his adversaries, and he's going to use this opportunity now to clamp down on the political opposition. This is the person I think Talon is. Talon is not going to be running in 2026, April of 2026, but he's going to make sure that his successor, who's going to, stay there probably for another 2 terms, which will be after 14 years, they're going to make sure that the opposition is silenced. Using this as a pretext to go
And
after.
you think what Nigeria going to do is like, okay, this guy that you pamper, this guy you rescue, see what he's doing. Is that going to cause Nigeria for it to kind of play more bigger role to
You
at least ensuring that democracy or the elections are free, fair, and that political prisoners and
you
other
you
oppositions are treated better?
Yeah, you will hope that Nigeria can use its leverage now on Benin to to ask for pluralism, real genuine multi-party democracy, freedom of the press, for the opposition, participatory democracy. But it's a cabal, it's a club, when the presidential club is something that when you're in there, and these guys protect one another. So I think that Tinubu is not going to do much. I stand to be corrected. And if he does, that will be the best thing. That would be in the interest of all of Africa, all of us. Okay. I mean, but if he does not, I think he's not going to. They're going to allow, Patrice Talon to call the shots. And with what he's already doing, I think that there's worse. The worst is yet to come for Benin's politics.
Have you heard anything from the United States? I know they will issue the advisory and say stay out, but
The
let's
U.S.
yeah, especially current President Trump, who maybe is not that nice when it comes to
No,
these countries.
I don't
And
know. I don't think he knows where Benin is. He has not said anything. Not that I expect him to say something, but I expect the State Department to
right,
to say something. I don't think I've.
because Benin is not new to the U.S., right? Remember Colin Powell during that time and
Yeah,
when they were
yeah,
making Benin and all that stuff.
yes. But it was those times. Those times are different from now. I mean, you're talking about Colin Powell, one of the uh, statesmen in the United States, and at the time there was a move, you know, to promote the image of the United States, not as this you know global power that goes out there to wage war on people, but the face of the United States that was promoted by Colin Powell and others was the United States that's compassionate, a United States that stands for democracy and freedom. You know, whether you believe that or not, but that was the kind of foreign policy that was being promoted at the time. You know, even with John Kerry and others that came after Colin Powell, same thing. But you know, this is a different administration. This is a different time.
Yeah, you know, before I
But
even
one
go,
thing they did do though, Dennis,
uh
uh, they've criticized the situation in in Tanzania. You
yeah,
know that that was noted in one of the State Department briefs.
one group we have not talked about is the citizens of Benin. What been their reactions?
Well, the people were it was mixed. The people were confused, and from the some of the interviews I've seen, people were shocked by the takeover, and so and surprisingly, uh, they didn't react to it in a way that you would think they should have if they wanted to preserve their democracy. So, for example, if Nigeria had not intervened, if ECOWAS had not intervened, for example, the military coup would have succeeded, and the citizens would have accepted them.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, I think they would have been accepted because what they were doing, the CMR, the military junta was doing, they were aligning themselves with the Sahel states. And that is an appeal. They were distancing by doing that. They were distancing themselves from France, from their colonial master. And that is a popular rhetoric now in West Africa. If you distance yourself from France, if you take on, you know, the Pan African causes. If you say, we don't want French bases in our country, we're going to shut down the French embassy, and we're going to move towards the Sahel state. That is a popular rhetoric right now, and I think that's where the coup leaders were moving towards. So they know what they were doing. They really do know what they were doing, because their slogan was, la patrie ou la mort, le peuple d'abord. So the people, fatherland or death, the people first. So they were selling their revolution, if you can call it that, to the people already. So they knew what they were doing.
Thank you. Again, let me welcome all of you to Roundtable Africa. This is where we discuss about Mama Africa, and I want to thank all of you for joining us, including Joseph Tao. Thank you, Roy Scott, Fan Dakina, Roosevelt, and all of you good people watching, even those who will watch later. Please do us that favor, share the show, invite someone, and we're going to give you the opportunity to call in 605-313-6004. The code is 791-403 Call and participate. Let's talk about Africa. Liberia is important. We talk about Liberia a lot. We also want to talk about other African countries because we are not living in an island, right? We are connected to other people. Liberians now, they go to Guinea, Ivory Coast to buy, they go to hospital in Ghana. So anything that is happening in one country affects all of us.
Yes.
Mr. Sherif, let's apply this to Liberia, right? We talk a little bit, but first of all, even before I go to that, the citizens of Benin that are that are in the diaspora. I know you're in a lot of these African chat rooms and you monitor the situation. What are they saying? What is the feel from Beninois outside of Benin, especially in the U.S.? what has been their reaction and what are they doing?
It's been too early for me to pick up anything diaspora wise. The Beni community it's small. It's unlike like Cameroon, for example. East Africans, the Kenyans, and all these different people. It's very small. So I haven't been able to. It's too early. I haven't been able to pick up anything significant from them. I do know that there is a opposition leader. Uh, Kemi Seba. Kemi Seba is a Beninese is a citizen of Benin. He's a Pan Africanist. you know, he's an avowed Pan Africanist who has called for the end of uh, Africa's connection with France. He has called, he's a celebrity in his own right, and he has attempted to run for president. I don't know if he's registered, but while the coup was going on, Kemi Seba expressed, and he's an opposition person, running for president, and he supported, he expressed support for the coup d'état.
Thank you.
While other opposition candidates like Boni Yayi and others
Yeah.
condemned the coup d'état, but Kemi Seba supported the coup d'état. Kemi Seba has visited, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali, and he has declared his support for the Alliance of Sahel States, the AES.
And implications to Liberia. We also have the president is old, and every time there is coup d'etat in other places, and Liberia is this back and forth where when you're in power, your political party, everybody is in favor of whatever you do, and the other guy is saying, "Hey, I don't know if you saw a little thing we ran. The six kind of politicians, and one of them is you see the wrong when you're out. When you're in, you didn't see the potholes. Now you're out and you see all the potholes. You see all the bad roads.
Yes.
So, what lesson can we learn from this, and what are Liberians still saying in their circle as to what's obtaining in Benin?
What Liberians hopefully can learn from this is that we are very vulnerable. We don't call it a coup belt for nothing. There's a reason for this, because all across West Africa, we've had so many coup d'etats, including some of the most ridiculous coup d'etats have occurred in West Africa. Recently in Guinea-Bissau, where the incumbent president allegedly invited the military into politics again. He has a military background. He came from the military, but he ran as a civilian. He won election the first term, so he was going for the second term, and he again eliminated the major opposition party, the PAIGC, that we talked about the other day, Jimmy and I. So he eliminated the PAIGC. So what the PAIGC then did was the PAIGC announced their support, declared their support for the opposition candidate. And so from everything that we're hearing now, after all of this that happened, the president was allegedly arrested, and then 2 days later he's on a flight to Dakar, and the prime minister of Senegal said, "No, I'm not buying this." The president, so this dynamics is very important. So the president of Senegal, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, accepted the Guinea-Bissau leader, the former president, but the prime minister said, "I'm not buying this." In other words, this is fake.
This doesn't look real.
This doesn't look right. This is fake. So we're not buying this. The next day, he was on another flight out of that country. So he went to Congo, Brazzaville. I'm hearing again that he has left Brazzaville for Rabat. So nowhere is easy for him right now. So, you look at that situation, very ridiculous. You look at the situation now in Benin, where on the verge of, multi-party election, you have the military coming in to politics, trying to stop the process. You had an attempt the other day, last year in Sierra Leone, which is right next door. You've had 4 years ago, you had one in Guinea Conakry. You've had one in Mali, two in Mali, all after 2020. Burkina Faso and others. You have two successful coup d'etat in Burkina Faso. In Niger, you've had a coup d'etat, a democratically elected president who is still being held by the military. What is his crime? We don't know. They don't know his crime, so they haven't charged him. So what does all this mean? It means that we have to be very careful with, in practical terms, with what we're doing, with our spendings and luxuries, with the abuses of power. And, you clamp down on, peaceful protesters. So we have to be very careful. The bodyguard that you're walking around with could be the next president of the republic. The guy who's, commander of the executive mansion. He could be the next president. The guy who's sitting out there, in the cold somewhere. You don't know. Who knew that a Samuel Doe would have risen from among the downtrodden, the forgotten, military officers. We used to call them Nokos. There was a song, Dennis. You say, Noko. Why you call me Noko? In the daytime you call me Noko, and in the nighttime you call me darling. This was how the military was treated in Liberia. So all I'm saying now is that we have to be careful with our democracy.
But many will say, Mr. Sherif, that we passed that stage. Some would tell you, and we don't have the kind of military that's going to overthrow us, and we don't have that the appetite for stuff like that. And so, even if the military is so weak, it's not independent, so you don't expect that, and so are we immune to this kind of thing?
We're not. The military was very weak in 1980. I mean, people would slap, an army officer, prior to the coup d'etat, prior to 79. People would beat on a military officer with a gun in his hands. People would slap an officer. These are things that occur. The disrespect, the disdain, for these people who are supposed to be our, protectors of the state, of the Liberian state, was, immense. Who would have thought that these military officers, of course, now, I have to step back a little. There are all kinds of theories, right? I mean, we know what happened. We theorize that, and these guys, didn't have the map to the executive mansion to do what they did. That they were put in these positions to do what they did. Having said all of that, the fact that they agreed to that contract, the fact that they went in there and shut their way through.
Because we didn't, like you said, you could slap a military, and that's why I even believe they did it, right? Because I mean, what was the military we had? But let me also announce that you're watching Roundtable Africa. If you have a question or comment, please call the number that is in the scrolling text. This is Roundtable Africa with FOL political analyst, Mr. Mohamed Sherif. And I've picked up, I've been writing of late, Mr. Sherif. I want to share with you that I posted that I'm start to write my some stories, and they will be on my page very soon. So
Mohamed Inside Dollar say hi.
Yeah. Mr. Dollar, thank you for joining, and bring more CMC people to watch the
show. He's a good man. He'll bring more.
Yeah. So let me show you what we have here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dennis, you look young.
I am young.
You, you look like a teacher there on the last one. Okay, that
Moses
one
and the stone that glowed.
you look like some of my
Moses
teachers
always
from
said that mornings
Kalipo.
in Ganta smelled like promise. Fresh coal pots burning, roosters shouting at the new sun, and the far-off hum of motorbikes waking the sleepy town.
Okay.
But inside his little house, mornings felt different. His stepmother, Masatu, started each day with complaints.
Okay.
Moses, you slow like old man. Hurry and fetch the water. Her voice followed him like a shadow. Moses never talked back. He would nod, grab the old plastic bucket, and walk the long road to the pump. At school, things
Oh
weren't
wow.
easier. His uniform had patches everywhere. His slippers were worn thin. Some children pointed and laughed. See poor Moses. He would lower his head and slip into the classroom quietly. The only place Moses felt seen, really seen, was in Teacher Gonpu's class. One afternoon, the teacher called him to stay after class. My son, he said gently, I see you always quiet, but your mind is sharp. Don't let anybody make you small. Study hard, the teacher continued.
All
Hard times don't last.
all right.
Strong hearts do.
Okay. So what is your goal for this? Okay. Did I lose Dennis? All right. So I'm gonna continue from this point. So basically, the military takeover. The military takeover in Benin. You were saying that what is the lesson for us? I continue to maintain that the lesson is to you know uh, practice good democracy, allow the opposition voices, allow free press. Do not clamp down on people who have different opinions of you or your policy or the way you're doing things. We've seen already Mr. Bwaka has exhibited some dictatorial tendencies as far as removing the speaker from clamping down on the legislature, making sure that the legislature was under his control. And you already have the executive mansion. You are appointing the chief justice for the next, before the next election. He's going to appoint the chief justice. Now he has the speaker, so he has all these powers. The question is, what would it benefit the Liberian people if you have all these powers? You're the almighty president now, so do something for the country. Do something for your patrimony before this will be your legacy to Liberia. To me, if I'm Mr. Bwaka, I would just do my one term, just like Nelson Mandela did, and just join your other colleagues now. Be a peacemaker around the world. Be somebody around the world. A goodwill ambassador for the debilitated AU. Be something. Do something with the rest of your life, and not try to sit there in the executive mansion. And travel all across the world, all around the world. It's very important that we have leaders who will show
Maybe
and
that's
lead by
diplomacy. Maybe that's diplomacy. But
example.
comrade, we almost at the end. We don't have any colors yet. But our next uh, our next episode will be on Cape Verde.
Yes.
All right, Cape Verde. So give us a little preview, and then we can conclude.
So, so democracy in Africa. We started a series called Democracy in Africa. So this is only on focus on Liberia. You can see such a thing. Where we're getting down to the nitty gritty. We're not just talking about democracy. We're also, you know, merging this with some historical backdrop of these countries, so that people understand that where from whence these countries come. So a little bit of pre-colonial backdrop, because people think that we didn't have history before the imperialists came. The imperialists, have maintained, that, or in the past, they've said that they discover. That's an insult. They will come in, well, so and so discovered this country. Oh, we discovered this. There was nobody here before we came. Who said that? So we're going to get into some of these things. So when we go to Cape Verde, the reason why Cape Verde is very important is Cape Verde is one of the smallest countries in Africa. And yet Cape Verde is one of the most stable democracies in Africa. There has never been a military coup in Cape Verde. Do you even hear about Cape Verde? Nobody hears about Cape Verde. So anytime they're not hearing about you, you're doing something right. So I picked Cape Verde for a reason. Somebody said they want to go to Singapore to learn how the people of Singapore are doing in terms of economy and their democracy. But you don't have to go to Singapore. You can go to Cape Verde and learn from the Cape Verdeans and see how they're implementing their democracy. And this is a very important country. Cape Verde is an archipelago. What is an archipelago? An archipelago is a group of islands. So there's a group of 10 islands off the coast of West Africa in the Atlantic Ocean, sitting there, with pristine beaches and so on and so forth. And it is in that country that Africa has one of its most important and stable democracies. It's a very fascinating story when we talk about Cape Verde.
Thank you. And we want to thank you again for coming. Thank you for Thursday. We're going to be back, and we are trying to make Thursday 7 p.m. Eastern for Roundtable Africa every Thursday night. We want you to come, invite a friend, and if you have suggestions, the countries you want us to talk about, the region or the topic, it's not all about countries. We can talk about certain topics that you want us to talk about. Please feel free, share this show, and just know that it is only on focus on like what this is done.
So Dennis, just real quick before you conclude there.
I know then you can close.
Okay. I know that when we did Tanzania and Cameroon and Cote d'Ivoire, it sounded like we were Debbie Downer, like we were beating down on Africa. But it is the record. The record has to reflect what these people's their policies are. The records have to reflect what they're doing to their own people, Paul Biya, Suhulu Hassan, others, what they're doing to the African people. Contrast that with Cape Verde. Cape Verde has no political prisoners. There's no politically related death in Cape Verde. Cape Verde has been a country that, effectively eliminated malaria. Can we say the same about Liberia? So stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Mr. Sherif, thank you again. Any parting comment before we draw down the curtains?
I just want to thank you, and I want to thank our viewers for staying with us to talk about the instability that was squashed, or the military takeover that was squashed in Benin. We will come around again to talk about the democracy in Benin. So at that point, we will touch on some of the historical backdrops and different things in Benin. So we'll go in depth into they had a triumvirate. So we'll talk about their triumvirate where you had 3 presidents in Benin. So we will come back at some point, but we want to go off now. We want to go to these island nations. So Cape Verde, Mauritius, and then Botswana, or Cape Verde, Botswana, Mauritius, and these 3 countries. So we talk about 3 bad democracies. Now we're getting ready to talk about 3 good democracies in Cape Verde, Botswana, and Mauritius.
Thank you. Tomorrow, same time, 7 p.m., watch Abby Taylor's Healthy Living. Then on Thursday, 7, you're going to watch Roundtable Africa. Friday is Friday Night Debate, right here on Focus on Liberia. You're going to watch On Point every Sunday, and many other shows Until then, we're going to close with our song that says, "We are all Liberians." Have a good night and God bless.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Liberia.